Hey guys, welcome to Hope It Helps, and my guest on the show today is my good friend Miss Tanvi Malik. Tanvi, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Khaled.
Thank you for coming today. I really appreciate it. I'm so excited to speak to you. So much to talk about. But before I start, why don't you give everyone just a little bit of background about yourself, and we'll take it from there.
All right, cool. So I'm a designer by trade, design strategist, I guess I would say. I have a very multidisciplinary background. I worked in architecture, in technical apparel, and brand strategy, marketing, like a bunch of different roles. I even worked in sales, like literally on the shop floor.
Oh, really?
I waitressed, like I've done it all.
Yeah.
And now I run a design studio, and we have a few projects going on that are self-initiated, so like our own business babies, and we do a lot of consulting for other clients and other businesses. And yeah, other than that, I mean, do you want to know about me?
Yeah, please.
Like,
We all want to know about you.
I mean, other than that, I guess I grew up between Dubai and New York.
Okay.
Some days when it serves me, I'm the girl from Queens. Some days when it serves me, I'm like a spoiled Dubai baby. So I
fair.
pick and choose my battles.
Yeah.
And yeah, I pretty much live my life between the gym and the beach and a glass of wine.
A glass of wine. This is the first time we do alcohol on the Hope It Helps podcast.
Yeah, sorry guys.
It's fine. It's
It
our
was
show.
my demand.
Yeah, it's fine. It's our show. We can do whatever we want. Okay, so grew up in New York, moved to Dubai as well, and you said you're a multidisciplinary. I want to say that right? Design strategist, and you worked across like so many different like industries and businesses. So I wanted to focus today all about like design and like branding and stuff. Because by the way, guys, this legend is the one who's doing all my new branding, so I'm super excited to show you guys it. But well, it's coming soon to an Instagram near you for sure. But I wanted to ask you, because I think everyone has a different perspective and opinion on branding. So in your own words, Tanvi, how would you describe branding? What is it and why is it so important?
You know, I think people forget that we're storytellers. Like people have gone through generations telling stories. That's how history is made. That's how we record memories and ideas. That's how we share thoughts and even build relationships and communicate with each other. So if you take that essential tool that we have as humans for connection and storytelling, that's what a brand is. It's like you're building a story that someone can connect with, connect deeply with, and it can impact their lives. And that's where you have something that will hopefully build a successful product or business, not necessarily because you're trying to make a sale, but because you're trying to solve someone's need or address, their big question. And that's what branding is. It's trying to position to someone the best story you can tell for what you're trying to do, so that it's memorable, so that it's exciting, and so that it builds a story that will last.
Yeah. So in other words, branding at its core all comes down to telling a specific kind of story to solve a need, which is whatever business you're running, you're trying to solve that need. So in the process of like coming up with like your branding, what should you be thinking about? Like, is it what kind of story do you want to tell, or is it more about how can we tell this story?
Good question, because I wish I had a straightforward answer. It's it has to be a balance, and we were just talking about like you can't find balance. But it has to be a balance of obviously what you're trying to deliver, who you're trying to deliver it to, so speaking their language, and also then your own vision for what this can be. And I think having a really nice rounded balance of like this beautiful aspirational narrative to the more tactical and specific and simple things that will get across to the right customers, to the right people you're trying to reach, that makes a solid brand.
A solid brand. So it's about, like you said, like targeting the right, like telling the right story to the right people. And one thing that I was thinking about when I was thinking about branding is I was thinking about like all the big companies, you know what I mean? Their brands are very like known, like think about Nike, Apple, Adidas, all that kind of stuff. But my guess is when they started, that wasn't the case. Their branding wasn't that strong. Do you know what I mean? So, and I was also trying to think, I'm like, okay, based on what you said, if you're trying to deliver the right story to the right people, that means as you evolve as a company, your target audience might change. So does that mean, like, is branding something that also has to evolve in accordance with that? Or is branding something that you kind of solidify from day one and then you just like make little tweaks and maybe like your strategy on how to start targeting like new people?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Your branding is the latter. Like, it's what you decide, you commit to. You make a commitment. This is my vision. This is what I'm never going to stray from. And it's broad because it needs to be to allow for all of those changes. And that's where communication and marketing and all of the things that come to support your brand and support getting the message out there, that's where you build more tactical strategies that are time-based and topical. And, you know, they will keep shifting to your markets, shifting to your products. But like, what you've committed to on a vision level, on a mission level, the kind of change impact you know you want to make, your personality, let's say, that shouldn't change.
Okay,
you
interesting.
know, the same way a person wouldn't change who they are based on their situation, they might change how they navigate it. It's the same for a brand. You change how you navigate, but you don't change the essence of what you are.
That's really interesting. So you don't change. So the brand is almost timeless, but I guess the strategies or the process of how you communicate that brand can evolve over time.
Yes.
With the same message in different ways.
Yes.
Okay. That's really, really interesting. I never thought of it like that. So what are the kind of things that make up like a good brand? If I told you, you know, from all the experience that you've done, what are the metrics that identify what a good brand is? Like, what would, for example, give me an example of a brand that you like, why is it good? And maybe we can get a better idea of like, what are the factors that play into that?
Like the different components.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what are the metrics that make up a good brand? Like, how would I identify, like, oh, that's a good brand. That's maybe not a good brand.
I almost hate myself for saying this because I use it in all my client meetings, like everything I've done for the past few years. This is my benchmark.
Okay.
But I think Headspace is one of the most solid brands I have seen.
Headspace. Interesting. Okay. Tell us why.
Brand. From having a very clear mission, which is executed on the most minute level to every instance and interaction that happens on their platform, to every animation that they create and every visual, to the very specific use of tone, whether it's read or it's heard. Like, every instance, you can measure it against the same mission. You can measure it against the same kind of principles, like brand drivers, however you want to call them. But it's very clear that like they're precise in what they've committed to do, and they don't waver from that. And I think that's an incredible brand because you've done the homework to know what's the right positioning for you and how to best deliver it, and you're consistent in delivering it on every single touch point. Okay. That makes a great brand.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's kind of like they talk about everyone's journey being different, and they talk about imperfection, and they talk about maybe you fall off and how do you get back, and it's this constant motivation and support, and that's basically the tool that they've built. So they've built the tool that serves that. They talk about that, and then they also have these beautiful visuals. Like, they have this imperfect circle, which is their main logo or their glyph. Like, awesome. Like, it's imperfect. There's nothing about their app that makes you strive for perfection. And everything is allowed and everything is okay. And that's the message they're sending. Everything is okay. Just take one step. And you see it in everything.
Yeah. And do you think, I think Headspace is quite a unique example because like you said, the message kind of covers it's like a wide net. Do you know what I mean? Like, all those kind of things are things that are their branding or their message is so relatable to us as people. So I can see why it's like successful, or you think like they do it like quite well. But in terms of something, maybe let's think of it as more of something more product driven. It's probably a lot harder to cast that wide of a net that's so relatable to so many people. Do you understand what I mean?
Yes. But then you have so many that are able to do this, but the reason I chose Headspace is because I can't say that it's because it's a good brand, or because they have legacy, or because they have the network effect. People that you value associate with them, and all of a sudden they become important. Like Nike, that's kind of their claim to fame, is that they've built such strong associations and partnerships, and they've tapped into micro communities. So this is all their strategy. This, to me, isn't their brand.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
This is great strategy work. This is great comms. But if I think of on a brand level, something that's just an incredible brand. I think I really struggle with that. I mean, this might be controversial. I think not controversial,
yes,
but maybe like
in there. It's fine.
It's not even controversial. I wish it was. It's actually just like I'm outdated, and I think this is still great.
Okay.
Like I think there's a designer. I don't know if you know Yoji Yamamoto, who is he was the collaborator on Y3, Adidas Y3.
Okay.
So he comes from this really like avant-garde school of thought, and in terms of his tailoring and construction, and he, like, if I think of how he's branded himself so that the Adidas and people of the world want to work with him, that might be like a product-driven good brand. I know this isn't maybe like the Cokes of the world, or it's not so conventional as an answer, but like as a person who's developed a brand around what they stand for and has consistently delivered on that, season after season of his collections, and then has been able to convince people like Adidas and Nike to buy into this mission. That's also a really successful brand. I think, like, because I work with a lot of startups, and I think about it from this perspective is like, if you really build something you're sure of, and that and you do it effectively and you do it consistently, then there is no big and small brand anymore. Then it's just about efficacy, and it's about time. So if you're effective for a long period of time, then you are essentially Nike. They've just have time over everyone else. So I think there's a lot of great brands out there that have proven themselves in other ways, and validation is a great way to prove a brand. So I think like Yoji Yamamoto being validated by an Adidas, that proved that he has an incredible brand and product out there, and what he stands for in how he approaches work is makes a great brand. Okay,
that's something you said that was really interesting. I was just thinking about this. So you mentioned personal brand. I mean, we've talked about this because we're doing the work, for my stuff. So would you say, because you said if branding's all about storytelling, is personal branding different to like a company branding? Do you have to look at it differently? Are there different factors that play into that? Because I was just thinking, I'm like, okay, personal and company, there might be some differences. What would you say?
100%. There's two completely different ball games. Like, I think a company brand, a corporate brand is like, that's not necessarily antiquated, but it is like the traditional way of going about it. And now more than ever, because we have so many startups, we have so many great entrepreneurs out there, like, and because we're in a completely social media world, personal brand is so important, and a lot of corporate brands begin as personal brands. So we can get into that in a second, but like the corporate brand strategy and structure, I mean, the whole architecture of a corporate brand works around the fact that you have an organization supporting this, meaning you have so many different elements that are living different things that make up the brand identity. There is the people, the leadership that is living the vision, and they're setting strategies. Then you have the operations that are making sure on a day-to-day level you're fulfilling your brand drivers, and you're using the appropriate tone of voice, and so there's a big system around making that brand alive, come alive every day. Whereas a personal brand, there's so much more fluidity in that. There's some level of authenticity, which right now people are really craving with the amount of content we all consume on a daily basis. So needing that authenticity and being able to tie to a person, to a face, rather than a big structure, makes personal branding so effective, like so much more impactful. And like, you know, you think about like micro communities, and you think about how people are just looking for connection, much more so than ever. And there's a very non-traditional mindset out there, especially in the Gen Z, you know, generation,
Yeah.
where they don't fall into the traditional pathways because now they have more options than we've ever had. They have more options than our generation. I can't even think about our parents. So with having so many options, you also, as great as it is, you also want things to hold on to. And that's small communities. That's individuals who share your voice and vision. Because the big guys get confusing. You don't know which brands to align to, and there's not an anarchist, but there is a bit of an anti-movement and everything right now. So, so that's why personal brands are so different, because you can move like a person, but you have the power of a brand.
Okay, so would you say, from what I've taken from what you said, is a personal brand can do, if you have a strong personal brand, can do a lot of legwork for you when you start some kind of corporate brand. You know, they could be like, this new company by this guy, but this guy has such a strong personal brand, so you have an easier for people, it's a much easier or natural buy-in into your corporate brand? Or do you think a corporate brand builds up a personal brand? Or what would you say for people to put more importance on? Or is it completely arbitrary and different to whatever the situation is?
There's some level of being arbitrary, but like, I think it's a push and pull.
Okay.
Like, now that the concept of a personal brand is so prevalent, we're seeing how effective it can be. Like, even if I think about like big industries, you know, if I think about fintech as it's coming up and stuff like that, there are individuals who have strong personal brands who become thought leaders in those industries. And that's where the companies that they're a part of, or the associations that they have, come to the top of those industries. You know, it's like, because you buy into, if it's an emerging like industry or an emerging market or thought or school of thought, the people that are championing that and that are like breaking barriers or being a little bit louder than everyone else, you start to attach to, and so then they bring everything with it. Whereas, like, you know, if it's a new brand without like much maybe validation, social proof, then people struggle to attach. So that's where maybe the personal brand can be a bit more effective. But yeah, it's totally a push and pull. Like I said, the Nike like network effect, right? Like Nike has done an incredible job of leveraging individuals with their personal brands, or micro communities with like their value systems, to attach to and tap into, so that it's made Nike have so many personalities. You know, so I think brands now can't deny that you need them. It started with like the influencer effect, but I think that's dwindling a bit, because of course now you think about, people see it for, you know, it being within the capitalist system, and, you know, to some level it's just a new way of advertising. But people that are out there every day genuinely speaking their truth, and saying something worth listening to, build really solid personal brands and can convert a lot of people to whatever they
want, right?
Whatever they want.
Yeah. I think something that you said that was really interesting, that using the Nike example, that they've been able to tap into so many like micro communities and, you know, certain people as well, has cast, as coming back to what we were saying earlier, a much wider net. So you have so many different personalities and different buy-ins now that will buy into the Nike brand because of creating that kind of stuff. So is building building that these kind of communities is what each brand kind of aims to do, or to create this many personalities and buy-ins for them to become like, to engage with you or to start following you?
I know, totally depends on the scope and size and scale. So I think like we're having a really like a big moment for like niche brands, because again, with the Gen Z wanting to kind of break the trend or break the norm, there's a lot of smaller brands serving these subcultures that are killing it, because you own that market. So you don't have to be the Nike that's everywhere, and you can actually be really focused and tailored to one specific community and still do just as well, obviously in scale. So you don't need one or the other, but then it comes down to what you've set out to do. like Nike is looking for a massive impact at a massive scale. And their strategies just have to change based on how people are moving today. And that means working with these smaller communities. And you can't put out a blanket campaign and expect, and expect conversion in the same way, because we don't, as a society, we don't work the way we used to 20, 30 years ago. People aren't all buying the same thing. We have so many little boutique shops and options, and, you know, e-commerce has changed the game. Accessibility is different. And, people want to know more. They want to dig deeper. They want to believe in what they're buying. They want to feel a sense of belonging and purpose and all of that stuff. So when you're trying to deliver on depth, it doesn't happen at scale. And so Nike's had to adapt their strategy for that. But then you have these small players that are doing really well because they only do that.
Yeah. I think that's a very great point. And it's so interesting that the depth part that you were talking about, that depth at scale is very difficult to do, even for a company of the size of like Nike, for example. That's why you still have to tapping into these smaller communities and getting that penetration in there, and like getting that buy-in and creating the right messages for those kind of people. And then you can start to like scale it up from that. So you kind of start small to go big. It sounds counterintuitive, especially for someone like them.
Yeah.
But that's really interesting. I never thought of it like that. One thing I was thinking about is, think about like Nike, Adidas, right? We're in the same market selling almost exactly the same products, right? And I was just thinking, okay, because any industry, there's multiple brands and you're all selling similar products. But you said from the beginning that branding is about storytelling, right? So if I'm selling you the same thing and we have a similar vision, how do I create a unique story that differentiates me from you? You understand what I mean? Like, because we're so similar and we're selling the same kind of thing. So why would you come to me? Like, what's your thought process, or what do you think is the reasons that create something that's mine is unique and yours is different than mine?
Well, it's if we take product differentiation totally out of the story, Nike and Adidas do have different stories, and they actually serve very different kinds of people.
Really?
And then when Under Armour came in, that like further enhanced the spectrum. Obviously, I guess sportswear is my comfort zone, so somehow we're only talking about that.
That's fine.
Or something that I know a lot about, I guess. So maybe I'm just gravitating. But yeah, like Nike is the American counterpart to Adidas, right? And Adidas comes with the European mentality, and Nike comes with the American mentality. So you're starting from there, where they're fundamentally coming from a different mindset, and then they're serving different people's lifestyles.
And cultures, right?
And cultures, right? Yeah. Absolutely. So like Nike was very much a performance brand, and now it's become a lot more lifestyle, and or lifestyle / focused on these subcultures or sports. But then Under Armour came out as the performance brand. So then that redefined performance, and then you had like the Nobles that were like sport specific and that stuff. So everything changed. But when they started, Nike and Adidas, like Adidas wasn't, not that it wasn't performance, but it was selective about the sports that it aligned with based on its culture, based on the people that were around. And then they have Adidas Classics, which was very much like the, not luxury, but like the ready to wear everyday casual that you definitely don't train in. And so they did like what we would call athleisure way before athleisure was a thing, way before Nike did it. Nike was just making running clothes. So there was that. They were catering to different mindsets to start with, and then they had to compete on a global level. So of course you start to have the overlap, and you start to have to fill the gaps that the others are doing. But yeah, I think they told different stories to begin with based on who they were trying to speak to.
Yeah. One thing I'd never considered was, which like you said, the core of it, which is one's an American company and one's a European company, and the mindset and culture that comes behind that, already it's going to have a different kind of story, because you're a different kind of people selling to different. And I never saw it as that different, but now listening to you explain it, I'm like, oh, okay, there is a much bigger difference than I was aware of, because I look at it as so binary. I'm like, okay, Adidas or Nike, it's very, in my mind, they're so similar, but clearly they're not. You said something earlier about social media, and nowadays, everything is kind of about like digital marketing and your social presence and like all that kind of stuff, right? So how important is it now, in your opinion, to have a strong presence in the digital and like social space? Why is it so crucial right now?
For brands or people, or both?
Both.
Because brands, I think that's the first point of discovery. If you're not going to be on social media, like, you may as well not exist.
Okay.
And it's so harsh, and
Yeah.
I wish I didn't feel that way, because I don't value social media that much. But unfortunately, especially, I mean, I'll take, even if I take COVID out of it, but how can you? People have really, really shifted how they interact with things, how they find things. And like, I always think about this moment. I was in a lecture like several years ago, and we were talking about how we live in the world of artifice. Like, everything we do is created, everything we do is designed to how you and I are sitting. Like, the table has been designed to have people on two sides. How you hold a glass, like, that's been designed. All of it, every moment. There's nothing in our life that isn't designed. So that comes into now living in a digital world where how you think and how you interact and how you shop, that's been orchestrated for you. And so if you're not playing that game, you're not in the game. This is, this is social media.
Yeah.
And for people, I think it's less so important. It's becoming more important. Like, I got an Instagram. I remember, I think this was like 2012 or something, maybe 2014. But because I was applying for jobs in the design field, and they were like, you're not a designer if you don't have a social presence.
Really?
Like, yeah, you need
Oh,
it.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, you needed to show your social media handles in your job application at that time. And I was switching jobs, and I was like, oh shit, like, okay, I need to do this, like, Instagram first post, like, what do I do? So yeah, it's becoming, I guess, depending on who you are and like what space you live in, pretty important. But at the same time, I think age and experience still has value. Like, I see a lot of people that I really respect that have basically no social presence because they're too busy getting shit done, and that's awesome.
Okay. So how did those guys kind of start getting the kind of awareness and reach that like social media has? 'Cause it seems, or at least my perspective is, without it, you can't really scale or get really get your name out there unless you're working with like some really big guys and you're already like have a body of work that is well known in that particular industry for you to be like, oh, I know who that is. I don't need to see his like socials or her socials to like understand what's going on.
It's the body of work.
It's the body of work.
They just do work. They put out good work.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, I would say, are definitely that if I'm thinking of specific examples, quite a bit older. By quite a bit, not like they're old, but they're not even in 10 years range of us.
Yeah.
And I think it's having the experience behind you to do great work that is recognized regardless of how it appears in this box.
Yeah. No, I think that's very true. I think the age plays a factor in that, just because you've had more time to do more things. You know what I mean? But one thing that you actually, and we spoke about this a little bit briefly before coming to like age and like experience. And I think on the social media point, it gives you the opportunity, whether in a positive or negative way, to show that you have a lot more experience than you might actually have.
It's a show-off space.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we were talking about how nowadays it's more about experience than your age, because your age doesn't define. You could be like 50 years old and have not done nothing. You know what I mean? And vice versa, you could be 28 and have done like 10 million different things and like started businesses and so on. So why do you think that shift has become so much more prominent nowadays?
Because we're not doing things in such a linear way anymore. I think about like my parents' generation. My mom, she wanted a lot, but because there was a way to do stuff, like you do this, then you do that. Yeah. Like you don't skip steps.
Yeah, exactly. You don't skip steps.
You don't skip steps. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, what? You're so radical.
Yeah.
So, and you do that, and then you naturally limit your potential. And then everyone's kind of working their way up in the same way. Whereas for us, and then Gen Z, I can't even keep up. totally different, and you can actually break the rules sometimes, and you can do things that are a little unorthodox, and then all of a sudden you've gained experience regardless of where you're supposed to be at a certain age.
Yeah.
And like we broke that, you know, door open, but Gen Z's just like running through it.
Yeah.
So the generation after us is so like they do what they want when they want it. And because they have access, because now they live in a much more digital world. Like we had dial-up growing up.
Yeah, we
right?
did.
Like,
yeah, we did.
Digital was not that accessible. Like I saw a meme today about Netflix. I don't know if you ever did it, but like Netflix used to be DVDs that you get mailed to you.
Really?
And you would only get 3 at a time. So it's like, I get to choose one, mom gets to choose one, my sister gets to choose one. That is it. You don't have endless options.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so like our life was different. And for them, endless options, endless opportunity, access to the entire world at your fingertips every day. That is mind-blowing if you really think about it.
That's true.
So when you have all of this, you can't think about their age. You think about what they're doing with their tools.
Yeah.
That's their experience.
Yeah. They have, so it's kind of like they have the tools now to build that experience at a much earlier and faster rate than we, like us 100%. And previous generations have as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now with you saying it, I'm like, oh shit, no, that's very true.
It's
that's very
crazy.
true. We talk like we're so old, like, oh, when there were DVDs, and our parents had fucking no internet, no nothing, and we're talking shit.
I know, but really, like when I tell people I used to order Netflix in the mail, they're like, what? Like,
I didn't even know about that. Yeah. That's how it started, by the way. I had no clue. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Well, look at it now. They just flipped the whole thing. I wanted to come to your work, on the work that you do. So you're a design strategist, and every meeting that I've sat with you, I swear if there was like, you create a meme for like our meeting, it's like you're telling me things and I have like a cloud bubble and it's just question marks, because it's like they have never even thought of it before in my life. So why don't you tell us and all the watchers at home, what does the role of a design strategist entail, and you know, what's all the factors that play into that? What is design strategy?
Well, I have to say it's a pretty new field.
Okay.
You know, and I think it comes from, I think I explained it to you. So there's like the design world, obviously, which at its precedent is problem solving. You put function over form, so it's kind of antithetical to art, and you design solutions, whether it's an experience, it's an identity, it's a process, anything. And then you have management consulting, which similarly does problem solving, but for businesses. And somewhere along the way, they realized like the powers that be, McKinsey, I don't know, like people realized that actually you can't really have one without the other, because how can you solve or, you know, redefine a business model or a strategy without thinking about the actual designed experience or output? And so somewhere they overlapped. There's some incredible people in this field, Tim Brown, IDEO, like there's some, you know, really great groundwork that happened a few decades ago and now continues to build this space today, which is design strategy, where these things overlap. So on a day-to-day basis, like I consider myself a solutions provider. Like I literally just like, whatever your problem is, tell me and we'll find a way. We'll find a way to make it work. But of course you ground it in like in logic and business sense. We think about sustainability and like future-proof strategies. We think about the fact that yes, we want to solve your problem today, but we want your success for the future, which means asking about your vision. It means asking about the impact you want to make, innovating the way you do things to really optimize, to give you the ability to constantly iterate and revise how you're doing because of those questions you asked in the beginning, because people change, markets change, times change. So how do you be so rooted in who you are and what you do, and have business sense in that, but be open to constantly growing, so that you can evolve as the world evolves. And I think at the root of it, design strategy is that, like, designing smart solutions. So it's not, like you said, it's not just about solving your problem today. It's about putting in a solution with a particular design so that 5 years down the line, this thing still holds and will optimize you and to achieve what, from a business perspective, whatever you guys are trying to achieve. Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things about design and strategy that I think I've always found challenging is, especially in the business world, you plan for 5 years, but you act for tomorrow.
Yes.
Do you understand what I mean? So when it comes to thinking because design strategy sounds like it's very long term, and it also sounds like depending on what you want, that those individual factors or inputs are going to play a big role in how that needs to be designed, like looking forward. So how do you start, like how do you think so long term, you know what I mean? That's something that I try to do, but I'm a human. I struggle with that like big time, and I think many others do too. So what's your thinking behind that? How do you like visualize that?
Yeah, it's funny because right now I have a client that I think is not very happy with me because I'm being so practical about like wanting him to about thinking about the financial outcome of our efforts today. Okay. And I'm playing it out over the next few years, and he's like, no, but like let's not worry about that because it's stressful when you're doing a passion project and all that stuff. So like I have to say it's not easy, and not everyone thinks that way, so it becomes difficult. But then our role, and I always tell people like my role is to help you find the best way to build the future that you envision from today. Meaning, like, yes, we build a beautiful strategy, but we also want to tell you how to execute it right now, and what are all the steps to take to get to this beautiful dream place that you have in mind, but also to protect you in your vision. And I think like that's something that I hold very important to me. It's like if someone is doing something with a vision, I don't want to shoot it down to build the best possible solution that will make the most money, of course that's important. Of course, but having a vision is also important, and helping people frame that vision. So when I think about long-term strategies, like I'm working on a really large-scale project right now where I'm thinking like 30 years out.
30 years.
30 years out.
That's way out of my ballpark. That's way too much for me.
So I'm thinking 30 years out, but we're building a tactical plan for tomorrow.
Wow.
To reach that 30 years out.
To reach that 30-year goal.
Right. So, I mean, how I think about it, of course, you have to, you take into account what we call ethnography and stuff. So you think about like place and time and people and markets and economies and all of that, everything that's the as is, like what is happening, as well as the actual service that this business is providing and how they're structured and stuff. So you map what exists, and then you kind of dream of what you want it to look like. And then it's about connecting the dots. And problem solving for like what is the best possible case to reach that, and creating priorities of like all of these things are possible to reach that. What's the most likely? What can I bet on? What's gonna do it most effectively in the shortest period of time? So it's asking yourself those kind of questions, and it seems really pie in the sky, and it does definitely. It takes a lot of work to have those conversations with stakeholders or with clients, in a manner that they understand and they can connect the dots with you. But then that's why like a lot of these larger strategy projects are like several months, and it's a process of having multiple conversations, of delivering bite by bite to get you to that 30-year vision, and make you feel comfortable that you will get there. But also give you a starting point. It's very scary to think about 30 years out and not know where to start.
100%. Like you said, so I think the best analogy you said was like pie in the sky, because especially 30 years out, that's definitely how it would feel. And I think, like you said, communicating that to stakeholders and successfully and getting them to buy into like the execution points, like we need to do this to get to like, you need to do this in year 1 to get to like year 2, and then year 2 and 3 and so on. So is design strategy something that is a consistent evolution, or is it about putting in place a very structured plan with the ability to have a lot of flexibility within that plan to start, moving those dots like towards the next year and the next year and the next year?
Yeah, I mean, a good design strategy is that. So there's the concept of, or the methodology of design thinking, which is, I mentioned Tim Brown, like he coined that, which now McKinsey has a design arm, and everyone from Berkeley to Stanford to whatever, they all have design thinking courses because they've realized how important it is. And design thinking fundamentally is thinking about designing processes that are iterative, that you constantly have something
Yeah.
to measure and work towards, and you know what are the variables that you probably will continuously improve and change based on X factors, you know. So it's like building a strong design strategy means that you know that this is life, things are in flux, things will change.
Yeah.
But how do you prepare yourself for that?
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, because one of my guests on the podcast, actually, we spoke about design thinking as well, and he said the same kind of thing that you did about making it an iterative process. You know, don't, like, if you have a project, don't do everything and then get to the end and be like, oh shit, there's like all these things that we have to change. You know, it's about, let's make this one small change, see if it works. It's like it's like an A/B testing strategy that's endless until you reach like where you're trying to go, right?
Literally that.
Yeah.
And even when you reach there, you're probably going to be like, oh yeah, I got something else to do. Like, that's just that.
Yeah. It's just how it is. Yeah. It's trying to factor in for as much unpredictability with minimal risk as possible. That's why the A/B testing kind of like works into it, right?
Literally. And that's how I think business consulting turned into this, is like or in its most effective form turns into this, is that that was quite definitive, and this is not. You know, it takes into account that the human condition will change every day, forever. Like literally.
I was just thinking before, man, we just we're like us now, speak to us in a week, we might have completely different answers to these questions. Literally, it's that significant. I wanted to ask you, because I know I was doing my research. Since you were 19, you've been working like 10,000 jobs, and I know you're currently working 4 jobs. It's not enough, by the way. I don't think it's enough for I don't know how you do it, but so, and I know you worked in so many different fields and industries, all kind of within like the, I guess, media marketing, branding / side, like in that bubble. But what would you say was the one during your career, because you're working now for like 8-9 years, was the most challenging, and which did you learn the most from? What would you say?
I think you always learn the most from your first job.
Really? Okay,
you know,
interesting.
Or it depends on your relationship with that job. If it's just something like, you know, my uncle hooked me up for a summer, like totally different than, you know, like we've all had those too. But like it's totally different for something that you've worked really hard to get, and there's a lot on the line, and you have to make like big girl decisions, you know, like my first job that I had is also the first job that I quit. Like that was a really scary moment. I didn't know how to quit, you know. And so I worked for, I mean, when I was 18, I worked in a yoga studio, but I don't necessarily count that. So my first real job when I was 19, and I had interned before that, I wanted to work in hospitality. So like at 6, I love hotels and everything to do with hospitality, like of placing cups well and whatever. It's the OCD part of me. So I interned in a hotel when I was like 16 or something. And I did a few other things, but I guess I would say my real first job, I was 19 and I worked for an architect, and I got it like, it was so by chance. Like someone was coming from Dubai to New York. I was living in New York, and I needed my paints from Dubai. I like used to do a lot of fine art, and someone who knew someone brought it for me. Did not know who this was, and I went into his apartment to pick it up, and I'm like, I was 18 at the time, super ballsy, always had something to say, and I walk in and I saw like a Warhol original on the wall. I saw a Frank Gehry chair. I was like, all right, who is this guy? He lives in a really nice penthouse, like let's talk. So I start talking shit, and like he pours me a glass of wine. He's definitely 50 and I'm like 18, but we pours a glass of wine, like we keep talking politics and like a lot of interesting things and just kind of pushing each other, and I guess we got on really well, and that random interaction that he made it a point to get to know me a little bit more. He took me on he was an architect, he's an architect, took me on an architectural tour of New York.
No way.
We like went for a hot pot with like his colleagues and stuff. So like, I guess maybe it was his way of getting to know me and also feeling me out. And he's a sculptor. He's super talented, like a very, very incredible person, artist, designer. And after about a year of like inviting me to a few different things and kind of having me around, he offered me a job as like the office intern, and then I became assistant. And at the time I thought I was going to be in fashion, like I was studying apparel, but I got a job at an architecture firm, so I was like, all right, let me pick up a few things. And I ended up learning a lot. I ended up taking a lot of night classes in order to keep up with my job, to learn interior design. And I was with him for almost 2 years, and I worked my way up to junior designer. And when they offered me the interior design position, which is like my cap in a firm of that size, I was with him for 2 years. So like I was just before I turned 21, and I thought, well, I can't be peaking right now.
Early.
It's too early, and I don't know if this is what I want. I just kind of fell into it, and by then I had left apparel and I'd moved into this multidisciplinary world. I decided to do integrated design, where I could mix a lot of design disciplines. So I the mindset I have today, I didn't know what it was then and didn't really have a name. But this kind of multidisciplinary mindset was very new in the design field. Like that major itself, I think we were the first or second year to graduate from it. So it was really underfunded. Like we had very little resources, but it was like all, I wouldn't say misfits, but like question marks. Like
the rebels.
The rebels. So so like I think that job taught me a lot of like, the less you define yourself, the more potential you have, the more opportunity you have. I completely let go of what I thought I wanted to be. And we talked about this, like I struggle with discipline really hard. Now I'm very disciplined in my work, but at that time, saying like how ballsy I was, like striking up a conversation with someone I don't know, and like just sitting in his apartment drinking wine, talking shit as if I know anything about anything. I was 18. I'm pretty sure I would be so embarrassed if I even remember what I said to him. But I was so, like no fucks given, really ballsy. And I was ready to not be tied to a singular definition of who I am and what I'm going to be. And that allowed me to grow so much. Like I'm very capable as like an interior architect, and that job gave me that. It allowed me to grow in so many ways. It gave me the confidence of like going to find other jobs after that, like being somewhere for almost 2 years when you're before 20, like that's, no one really does that, it's a lot of commitment.
100%.
So, and I didn't know I had that commitment. I wasn't the best. I was terrible with school, actually, not the best, terrible. Like I was on like academic probation, kind of terrible, not because I'm dumb, I just didn't care. And I didn't believe in like education. I didn't think this was important. And it taught me all of these things. So I think that was incredible, and taught me how to deal with the dynamic of working for someone. Sorry, what was your other question? Like, what taught you the most?
What was like the biggest thing? Like you like, I was asking you across the career, but it sounds like that first job is when you learned like the most shit.
You learned a lot. I learned a lot. I mean, like every job I think taught me a lot, but that one I think was, you're the training wheels. So you learn the most on that. But definitely there's been other circumstances. I think learning how to quit. I keep learning how to do that. Now I work for myself, so it's different, but that was always very hard for me because the same way I am in relationships, I am with work. Like you see the potential and you just buy into that. But I mean, I would say like the other one is probably I worked for a really high growth startup just when I graduated. So this was 5 years ago, and I had left. I really wanted to work in technical apparel. I love fitness and everything about it. And so I worked retail for a sportswear brand for a year until I got this job working in design for a sportswear brand. And it was started by 2 ex-investment bankers. Our office was on Wall Street. It functioned like a Wall Street company, like 20-hour days. And I was part of the initial team of 10, second person on the design and production team, which is like in another business that would be several departments.
For sure.
So I learned so much about, we built IP into that business. We saw them through 3 rounds of funding successfully. I opened 3 stores for them in the States while obviously doing my job of like, designing the work, working on production, hiring and staffing, training, doing sales every single day on the shop floor, to hit sales targets, and working through the holiday season. I never saw my apartment because I was in Boston all the time, or another city. So I was barely in New York anymore, and like gave my whole life to that job. And I think that was the other big learning, like first job and then that job.
And that job.
That was my hardest job ever.
Yeah.
Like it was such a big learning, but I learned a lot about how to run a business, how to build a team, how to train, how to do all of it.
Yeah. And I think what you said about something really interesting that you said is like the less you define yourself, the more I don't know if correct me if I'm wrong, it was an opportunity that you have, or the more potential like you could
Both.
get into. So I've never looked at it that way, to be honest. I always thought the goal, or all our goals, like as people, as businesses, is to solidify who you are and that identity. So do you still feel that way now, or now do you feel that, do you have a different perspective on like that statement?
No, I still feel that way.
Really? Okay. Interesting.
Like, I'm a chameleon. I like literally. But I'm not even joking. Like I literally,
No, I believe you.
that is how I feel about life. Like
Yeah.
you have values, you know your skills, you know what you believe in.
Yeah.
But beyond that, like why tie yourself? I don't want to say tie yourself down. It sounds a little promiscuous,
Like restrictive.
but like
yeah. I get
like
you.
restrictive. Like that's why I say I feel like I'm a solutions provider, because I don't feel anything is beyond me really if I take the same approach
Yeah.
to everything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it makes sense.
then there's just maybe a little bit of a learning curve if it's something you haven't done before, but it's like if you have the right mindset and the right thinking and the right toolkit, nothing is really beyond you. And I think if everyone took that approach, people would be so far. If you tell yourself I'm a sales analyst, or you give yourself one role, then you're so stuck in that role and the definition of that role that you actually don't see yourself for all your potential, for all your tools, for all your experiences. And that's actually what allows you to grow and to test. And I think as human beings, all you want to do is test, to see what you can do.
Sure.
Yeah.
As a very refreshing perspective, I've never heard anyone talk about it like that, but the way you explained it, I'm like, it's really interesting, because like you said, we have our, I guess, our set factors, almost set, not necessarily even, but why tie yourself down and not use those to express it in so many different ways and different experiences and so on. I think that's a very refreshing perspective. I've never heard anyone talk about it to me like that. So thank you. That's good. I like people who like make me think differently.
And it gives you confidence.
For
You're
sure.
like, man, I can take whatever this is because I'm prepared. I have the right tools.
Yeah,
Focus
exactly.
on your tools. Don't focus on the rest.
100%. 100%. That's so interesting. I wanted to come on to your current job, which is at Sense Studio. That's your business and everything. So why don't you tell me and all the viewers at home what is Sense Studio, and give us a little background about what was your motivation for wanting to start it.
Well, I had no motivation to start it.
Okay.
I was working when I left that job, like the apparel, the technical sportswear. I was just like so burnt out. I had left with the decision of like, I was on a green card track and stuff with them in New York, and I left with the decision that I would rather pursue happiness and take a bet on myself than be in a shitty place and be scared of a piece of paper like this visa. Like,
Visas are so annoying, man.
There's no way a piece of paper is going to control my life.
Okay.
And I made that decision, and
Mm-hmm.
I fought really hard because they tried really hard to keep me. And I was as young as 23. And of course, you kind of feel like, oh shit, like, am I fucking up my future? But at the same time, yeah, I just felt like I need to take the risks. So coming from that space, it was a made in USA sportswear brand, and learning everything I had, I looked at what tools I could apply to this region. So I was kind of doing a goodbye tour to like everyone I worked with, everyone I knew in New York. And in this goodbye tour, I caught up with someone, Agustina. She's so dear to me. I met her in that first job with that architect, and she taught me how to use AutoCAD, and like,
I have nightmares
yeah,
from that.
yeah. And like she's from Argentina. And so like
Okay.
I would help her with some copywriting stuff. And, we built a bond, and then of course we worked together for that 2 years, and we stayed in touch. So we went for a coffee, and she had just started a business, a boutique design and build firm in New York. And she's like, oh, I need help with a building. Like, are you still comfortable doing that? I'm like, yeah, cool. Did one building with her while I was coming here to Dubai and kind of feeling it out to do the sportswear. Ended up, this is 2016 to 2017, so 2 years. Ended up building like 10 buildings with her. One turned into 10 in New York. A lot of it was all like development projects. So, in Brooklyn, where like they kind of renovate, like got renovations of older buildings, and put like condos on the market for the modern customer. So that was an interesting experience. And then at the same time, I was flying back and forth with Dubai, 1 month here, 1 month there. And what we built here with someone I went to high school with, randomly got in touch with each other, and we ended up building like a sportswear brand that actually did pretty well for starting with basically nothing. So like by our third release, we like broke even in 2 days. We were making good money on it, and I was getting like people reaching out to me for investment. Okay. So I was like, all right, I can't live between two continents. Yeah. I'm super tired. I was working 2 time zones for 2 years. I slept an average of like 2 hours a night. It was nuts, and that's where I'm saying like don't limit yourself. Like I just didn't think about it. I was just like, oh, this is just what I'm doing. Like cool, this is how I'm living.
This is it. Yeah.
This is it. And it was just interesting to me to figure it all out. So I'm doing that, I'm doing this, and I was here. And while I was doing the sportswear brand, of course, people knew me as like, I had freelanced for quite a few big brands, through people I'd worked with before, like Reebok and Noble and stuff. So I was like the girl like that did the design for Reebok or whatever. So it's like that got me like, like that got me like one random client. And then I got another client, and then all of a sudden I'm doing like the freelance brand strategy and branding and whatever, and social media on the side, and like it was obviously way too much to handle, so I needed to make a decision. So I literally like overnight canceled my last ticket back to New York, end of 2017 December. 2 weeks out, I canceled it. I decided to stay in Dubai. I decided to formalize what I'm doing in terms of the freelance clients. So in order to really legally make money here, I needed to put a trade license to it. And with the clothing, I actually pulled it offline, which is what you see today. And like I decided, because I'm getting people asking to invest, and it was actually a lot of demand outside of UAE, whereas that was very UAE centric. Yeah. What we were doing at the time, that I needed to rebrand it, make it less UAE centric. Swarovski and I were already in touch, and they wanted to collaborate on stuff. So there was all these things happening that I felt I should just take a risk. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I moved here and started the studio. I had a partner at the time. I knew her from the fitness industry. That was basically my space. So she worked with me for about a year, but then kind of really like PT is her main thing. So yeah. I think like we realized that, no, like this is my thing and that's your thing, and that's totally fine. So that happened. And I think after the first year where we were just feeling it out, figuring out what we each wanted and stuff, and building our client base, to then year 2, which has been this past year, where after I took over the whole company. Now I have a team of 4 people. So they sit right between strategy and creative. I'm trying to train all of them to have this kind of ridiculous mindset that I have of like not committing, not putting a box, and just trying everything. So it's really interesting, but I love all of our projects. Like I think that we have the ability to create impact no matter how big or small with every client that we work with, and having such an like a genuinely like curious and excited mindset every day is what built this business. Yeah. Literally no intention behind it, just like cool, like I want to help you solve that problem, let's figure out how together. Yeah. So it's been all of that, and now of course like the clothing line's kind of filtering back in. We're trying to figure out what to do with all of these like loose pieces that me being me has like accumulated. Yeah. But yeah, I'm still somewhat involved in all these past lives and past selves.
Yeah. It's so interesting that I love the when I ask you like what was motivation, like I didn't have one. I just kind of started, but it started like now hearing the story started as a result of your hard work and like the accumulation of so many different kinds of projects and different things. So it makes complete sense to formalize it. But again, you need a company, you need people, because you're going to be spreading yourself way too thin.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I know you already have such a lot on your plate and you're already spreading yourself too thin. So I don't know if you fixed your problem,
No.
but it's not a bad problem to have.
No, it's not. I'm super grateful. I love what
Yeah.
I do, and like it genuinely excites me. Like
Exactly.
I didn't know that I didn't know that it was possible to really wake up every day and be like, fuck, I want to solve that problem.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how I am.
Yeah. It sounds like it gave you the arena or the platform to fully like fulfill or express your creativity that you love. Because I know you're a design strategist, artist, and writer as well, correct?
Yes.
So I was curious when I found that. I'm like, oh, I didn't know she was all those things as well. So if I told you, if you had to pick just one, don't think of it from a financial perspective, just from what you love to do. Which of the three is like the one that you're like, that? Is it a writer? Is it an artist? Is it designing? What would you say? Who really is Tanvi?
Yeah. Should I give you like the really annoying answer? I mean,
that's fine.
the really annoying answer is that I think all of it is art. I think every single like this is your art. I think every single person, what they do is their art, if you choose to define it that way.
Yeah.
Like, sure, I've lived in the traditional sense of like I grew up doing fine art and I love that, and that could be like your artist, but I think everyone has their own art. Whatever you do on a daily basis is your art. So I think that's what I am.
You were right. That is the annoying answer.
Right? I'm sorry.
Don't be
It's
sorry.
the most annoying thing ever. But
that's what you believe. That's what you think.
It is what I believe. Like, you're an
Nothing wrong
artist.
with
Just
that.
embrace it.
It's so funny. I mean, like you said, it's annoying. I was kind of setting myself up. I'm like, okay, how? And then I'm like, oh, it's exactly that. Okay.
But it is that. And, you know, I'm going to tell my kids they're special. And like, it's that kind of answer.
As you should, man. It's fine. If that's what you believe, if that's what you truly believe, like who gives a shit? That's you.
It is
At the
what
end
I
of the day.
believe.
What was I know recently you completed your you did a certificate of women's entrepreneurship right at Cornell, so I thought that was fucking sick, and congratulations. By the way. So the question I was thinking about is entrepreneurship. I know there's classes on it, I know there's courses on it, but it seems from my perspective it's a very do and figure out kind of like way of life or way of working and so on. So I'm curious, what was your biggest takeaway from that course that you learned about entrepreneurship? Because I think that would be super useful.
Should I be honest?
Nothing?
Literally nothing. So,
What the mic? Really?
literally nothing. And I wish so. For context,
Yeah, please.
my sister works for or she's a co-founder at this tech startup in New York.
Okay.
And they do a lot of they do diversity and inclusion training for a lot of corporates and workshops and things like that. So I had seen it in her newsletter, and this is like over a year ago. And then it crossed my mind, but I was like, I don't know, whatever. Like, I feel like I'm good. And then she had messaged me. She's like, oh, you know, Bank of America and Cornell have partnered to do this thing for free. Typically, it's a paid course.
Okay, sick.
So, but like it's capped, so you should apply. And because my sister said it, and I really value what she thinks, and you know, she's one of the few people that really know me, I was like, all right, if you think it's valuable and if you think I have the discipline to do this, let's do it. So then I applied, and I got in, but they had so many applications that they put me on a wait list for the next year. So
For a year?
For a year. So
Oh,
this
wow.
was last year. And then
Okay.
this May, it's like Corona. Like, I don't know what's happening in life. And I got an email, your course starts in 2 weeks. And I was like, what the fuck?
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So like, this is where ego comes in. I was like, no, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do it fucking well.
I'm going to kill this.
Yes. So it's 2 week like increments.
Okay.
I hope no one from Cornell ever hears this, but like it's 2 week increments. And I would literally do the work like 2 hours before the midnight deadline of the 2 weeks.
Okay.
And I found it so easy and actually no takeaway. And it was also very like New York centric. And I did actually have a small like business in New York when I first went freelance. Again, legal reasons.
Yeah.
But like, I just found that there was really nothing. There was nothing. It was like a lot of like, okay, this is what a business model canvas looks like. This is what you need to think about when you're negotiating. Like, sure, that's cool, but like if you've been in the game for a few years, like you kind of already been through that. So I was hoping that there would be more. I should have probably just stopped doing it, but like somewhere I was just like, yeah, this is my ego. I need to finish it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did the course.
Yeah.
I thought it was nah.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, from the sounds of it, you already, everything that you would have taken in the course, you kind of already learned from your real life work experience and running your business. Okay, that makes sense. And thank you for being honest. Some people be like, oh no, maybe that's good.
No, I'm so honest. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Please don't. For my last few questions, I wanted to ask you, what's the best career advice you ever got? And then we'll move on to the next one after that.
Okay. The best career advice I have to say is like, it's back to when I was wanting to leave my first job, and one of my colleagues, she was my direct report at the time, and I really saw her as a mentor. She told me, and actually my mom continues to say the same thing, so maybe it's like a thing that women learn when they're working, like, I don't know. She was like, you shouldn't feel guilty that you're leaving, and like you don't owe anyone anything but respect when you work for them. So if you've shown up every day and you've done your job and you've done it respectfully with nothing but the best intentions, you've done your job, and that's really it. And I think for someone like me who's super passionate about what you do, you get heavily invested in the vision and the business and the person that's running it and all of it, and being able to remind yourself to step away from that passion, that's what allows me, I think, to be so disciplined today with my clients and my work. Like, sometimes a project isn't going the way I think like its true potential should go, and then I just remind myself of like, no, but I owe this person respect. I don't owe them my life. So just like take a step back. It's not your baby. It's not any of that stuff. And that really helped me frame the parameters around work. And I think for anyone, it's like, love your work, do your best to love your work, but know that, especially when you're doing it for someone else, know that all you need to bring to the table every day is respect. I
think that's amazing advice. And I actually felt something similar with my first job. I thought, like, if I left this company and let's say I went to work for like a competitor, let's say, I'm like, oh, I have like a loyalty, to this company. That was the word that was in my head, because I value loyalty quite highly. But what I've learned in my working experience is like, I couldn't give a fuck about loyalty, and they don't care either. It's not that you shouldn't care and they don't care either. So like you said, as long as you showed up, were respectful, did your job, what you have been paid to do. That's it. At the end of the day, everyone, at the end of the day, and I tell this to everyone's going to do whatever they need to. No matter who they are, no matter what company you work for, everyone's going to take whatever decision they need to that they think is the best for their life and for their future. And on future, what's your vision for the future? What would you like in the next few years?
For me?
Yeah, for you.
What would I like? I'd like to go to Mexico.
Okay.
Like time off. Like I love what I do, and I'm totally fine with the fact that I work 7 days a week most weeks. But at the same time, I think how much you get from self-reflection and from stepping back only makes you so much better at what you do. So
for sure.
I think finding opportunities to do that without letting things crash and burn would be incredible. But in a few years, like I have a team of incredible women, and I would see them as my partners. I would see them building this business into something that would make each of us happy in our own ways. That for me is the most important. Like, I do what I do, but if you're not gonna have a tangible impact, if you're not gonna value those around you, then I don't think what you're doing is like really enough. So, and I know that's a high standard to hold, but like I think that's it. Like I want if I can, to support those around me, and I would hope that I get the same. And I've had some incredible mentors in my life, so I hope I can do that. So yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it's a high standard. It's your standard, because high, you're measuring it against what? It's all subjective. It's all relative. Tanvi, this has been so much fun. Like, my mind's like blown with some of the things you said. Like, I never even thought about things in this way and whatever. So I personally have learned so much from from our conversation, and you've really helped me get a new perspective on so many different things. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
The question that I like to ask all my guests at the end is, what is a message that you'd like people to take home with them today?
I think the most important message that everyone at any age can take home is that nothing is finite. Like, really nothing is concrete. Tell yourself that every day, even if like someone is like, no, but you're that guy, like you're good at that, or you wake up every day and you're like, no, but like I'm sitting in this role, or I'm that person's this. None of that actually matters. Nothing is finite. So the more you believe that you have endless potential and opportunity, the more you can achieve in life. And I think everyone deserves that much.
Yeah, that's an amazing message, and a new one. No one's ever said that before. No one's ever said that on the show before, and I love the message behind it. You know, like, seek out your endless potential and do the best you can. You don't know what's gonna come. We don't know what's happening tomorrow. So just, believe in yourself, put in the hard work, and see what happens. Don't just, as you said, continuously, just don't box yourself in, right?
Exactly. It sounds like Peter Pan, but it's really not. It's not.
No,
It's not that.
No, I don't think it is.
Dreamy, it's
it really isn't.
In the most realistic way.
Yeah.
It's like, it's actually what we are. Like, none of us are finite. We're human beings. We change every day.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's that.
100%. Thank you so much, Tanvi, for coming on the show. This has been so much fun. I've loved it, and I think a lot of people can take something from this across so many different things, from marketing to branding, whatever. I know I've learned a lot. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Guys, to everyone at home watching, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. And as always, hope it helps. Peace.